The New York City Schools chancellor and a new candidate for mayor. He's a man who likes to run obstacle course races, and so joining the field of mayoral wannabes should be right up his alley. The Point starts right now. Melissa Aviles-Ramos was thrust into the job of schools chancellor on short notice after David Banks resigned. He's intent on putting her own stamp on the office. Chancellor, welcome so much to doing the show.
Thank you.
I want to start by talking about something that Governor Hochul announced on Friday, which is that the state is now going to pay for universal free breakfast and lunch for students. What does that mean for students in the state?
I mean, this is huge. We know food insecurity is such an issue across New York State, definitely in New York City. We already offer universal free breakfast and lunch here in New York City, but this is huge for the state. Children absolutely need to come to school with their needs met. It's one of the reasons why when I transitioned to chancellor, I made these 3 commitments to New York City families rather than bring in other initiatives, particularly because we already had some great initiatives going. And one of them is overall sense of safety and wellness. And when we talk about wellness, that also means addressing food insecurity. So I'm very excited for the state.
Well, 2 issues. One, are there studies or anything that indicates that kids who have food in their stomach learn better, do better on tests? I mean,
100%. And I was a principal and a teacher, and I can tell you that out of my own pocket, I would make sure that I had plenty of snacks and plenty of food in the office and in the classrooms, because we know that when kids come to school hungry and their needs aren't met, it is very hard to focus. I mean, as adults, I know if I don't have a cup of coffee by noon, it's a problem for me, and I'm an adult. Imagine for children who are coming to school with empty stomachs.
So then the other issue is that this will put money back in the pockets of parents, up to $2,000 a year. What can that mean for, families who are in homeless shelters or migrants or who are low-income families?
This means that we're giving families an opportunity to not have to choose between buying meals and buying a coat or paying for supplies. I mean, families have to often negotiate amongst these critical needs, and that's not fair to them. It's something I experienced growing up myself, and so to the best that we can really provide that village. We talk so much about it takes a village. I mean, what we're really trying to do is make sure that the village is taking care of the children.
So I want to talk to you about something else. The mayor announced a new initiative in his State of the City speech where he wants to teach kids financial security, and he wants to open, believe it or not, 15 banks in schools so that kids can learn how to be financially intelligent. Tell me about that. What does this do? Why do kids need to learn that?
Oh, it's so important. First of all, we know that we have plenty of high earners who don't know what to do with their money. And here in New York City Public Schools, under the leadership of the mayor, we've really prioritized our Pathways program, Future Ready. And what we're saying is career-connected learning is important. So that way, children are actually experiencing these careers while they're in high school, and they're getting a head start. But to what extent is that helpful if we don't really teach our children how to invest money and how to make the most of these salaries that they're now able to get?
But does it also teach them how to, write a check or pay a bill, or it's not only saving money and how it's
foundational.
Also, I mean, isn't it also important to save your money as opposed to buying another pair of sneakers or whatever? What will it teach them?
Well, it's all encompassing, right? It's how to invest, how to save, but also how to make smart purchases. And as you mentioned, how do we defer some of this immediate gratification and think about the future? And those are the things that a holistic approach to financial literacy really entails.
I guess you wonder how come we haven't done it before.
Well, I think we've done things in small pockets. This is not new to the system. There are schools that have done this before. I know my school has, my former school did some work in this area. But what's different about this is that we're prioritizing it as a city, and we're giving all schools the resources to be able to do this in a bigger scale.
So let's talk about another thing that's sort of a hanging chat, and that's cell phones and whether they should be banned from the classrooms. I'm wondering where we are on this in terms of a cell phone ban in New York City schools.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So as a principal, I actually collected cell phones from my students. And I have to tell you, instructional time was absolutely sacred because we collected them. That being said, the mayor and I are in lockstep on this. It's not that we don't agree with cell phones not being in classrooms. We absolutely don't think they should be in classrooms. But what we want to make sure is that that journey from great idea to implementation is a solid one. And we have around 1,600 schools in New York City, and every school looks very, very different. We have some schools with 200 kids, some with 400 kids, some with 6,000 kids. Wow. So we need to make sure that this rollout is really sound. And what I will say, Marcia, and I said this to someone recently, you know, if we're doing this to protect instructional time, game changer. But if we don't pay attention simultaneously to another issue, which is mental health, then taking cell phones from 8 to 3 isn't going to solve that, because the cell phones are an instrument for students to express anger, frustration, depression, isolation. And so we need to couple this with mental health support. It's kind of like giving someone with chronic migraines an Advil every single day. At what point don't you say, well, why do they have chronic migraines, right? We need to get to the root of the problem. So if a mandate comes down, sure, we're going to do what we always do. We comply, but we want to make sure the rollout is sound, and we want to make sure we're paying attention to mental health as well.
So I know that a number of parents are concerned about it because they think that if there's any kind of a terrorist attack, or they want to be able to get in touch with their students. How do you deal with the parents' concerns about the ability to get in touch with their kids and make sure they're okay?
And that's one of the reasons why Mayor Adams and I feel so strongly about using this year as engagement. We're also doing an assessment on the schools. How well are the family communication plans? My own daughter goes to New York City Public School. I want to make sure I can get in touch with her if there's an emergency, right? So we need to make sure that the schools are equipped. We do have, you know, our Gamma system where you can send out mass messages to families and keep them posted, but we need to make sure that that's super, super tight so families feel comfortable with the children's cell phones collected.
So the other issue, I think, is when you collect them, where do you put them? I mean, I suppose it's a lot easier with a school with 200 students to put it, to have a system for doing it, but 6,000 students, like, how do you collect them and where do you put them?
Yeah, so that's, again, that's also part of the engagement process. So in my case, I had around 400 kids and I actually collected them, and shortly before COVID, I was planning on moving to the pouches where you can keep them on your person, but you can only unlock them with magnets, right? And so there's so many different models. Some people hang them at the front of the classroom, and we're collecting those best practices so we can say, hey, principals and teachers, what works best for your school community? But these are the models that exist. And schools themselves, we have about 500 schools that just on their own said, you know what, we're going to do this. We have a chancellor's regulation that supports with it. You go through the school leadership team. It's not new to us. We just want to make sure that if we're saying you all have to do it, we do it the right way.
So with the legislature going back into session this past week, another issue comes up, and that's the issue of charter schools and the move by some to ask that they lift the cap on charter schools so New York City and other places could have more charter schools. How does the New York City school system feel about more charters?
You know, New York City Public Schools is really focusing on bringing kids back into our schools. Parents should be able to make whatever choices they want for their children, where they go to school, whether it's private, parochial, charter, whatever the case is. But what's not acceptable is that your local public schools are not an acceptable option. And so we're marketing our hidden gems. We're making sure that we're reaching out to families and telling them about the amazing programs that exist, and we're staying focused on that.
So basically, you want to go into a marketing war with the charters to. Marketing
war is harsh. We just want to let people know how good we are.
I mean, but you want to be able to say that we can educate your kids as well as anybody
100%, but that's why New York City Reads and New York City Solves were so important. And we've been a little shaky on New York City Solves, and I'm so grateful to Michael Mulgrew and Henry Rubio, great partners in helping us, you know, sort through some of the hiccups there. But New York City Reads was so important because that was a step in the right direction. We need to make, we've been talking about this as a literacy issue. It's an equity issue. You shouldn't have to question question what kinds of curriculum and its quality based on the district that your child goes to school in. I want to know that my child, if she's going to school in District 8, District 2, District 30, she's getting high quality standards aligned curriculum. And that's what we're doing. That's what charters do.
Chancellor, thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it right there for now. But up next, a man who climbs mountains for a hobby. He's running for mayor, Whitney Tilson's new Mount Everest. Whitney Tilson spent his childhood in Tanzania and Nicaragua, climbs mountains for sport, and participated in the Stanford Marshmallow Challenge. I guess that makes him a mayoral candidate like no other. So before we get to all the many priorities that you have to ask you about the fact that, you are a man who loves obstacle course races. You like to climb mountains. Do you think that attitude makes you fit or qualified or more qualified to be mayor of the city of New York, which is, by the way, climbing a lot of high mountains?
Yes, for sure. Yes, I think because I like big, hairy challenges in both my professional life and I suppose in my personal life, and I'm not afraid of big obstacles, and I've generally succeeded in overcoming them.
What do you think the biggest obstacle or challenge will be in running for mayor of the city of New York?
I'm a first-time candidate, and the system is sort of rigged against first-time candidates. It's an off-year election. It's sort of designed to make it hard for an insurgent outsider like me, and so I've got to go straight to New York voters with a message that if you want change, if you think the city's headed in the wrong direction, I'm your change candidate.
Well, Michael Bloomberg did it. There's no reason why you can't as well.
True. He dropped $73 million of his own money in the race to get his name out there, and I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be running a retail campaign and just going out there and reaching to voters.
Are you going to run as a Democrat? Yes.
Yes, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and so I'm running in the Democratic primary.
So I have to ask you this question. Eric Adams, he's going to be running for re-election. He's going to be one of the people in the race. How do you feel about him as a person who could possibly get re-elected?
I hope that doesn't happen. I voted for him last time, had high hopes for him, and he has just been an enormous disappointment, proven to be tremendously corrupt and ineffective, and perhaps even worse, surrounded himself with more than 24 people who've been indicted under investigation, resigned in disgrace, and the city is paying the price.
So if you were to meet him in a debate and you were asked to sum up his accomplishments and his lack of accomplishments, what would you say?
Well, there haven't been many accomplishments. I will credit him for having a good speechwriter. He says a lot of the right things, but then there's no follow-up. He's had 3 years, and he was just out recently saying a lot of good things and proposing a lot of new things. And I was like, well, what have you been doing the last 3 years? Well,
at his State of the City speech, he did claim that he has reduced most crime statistics since he took office.
No, he is not. I can show you the facts. Crime is up substantially, and New Yorkers feel a lot less safe, and the data backs them up.
Is it really the data, or is it the perception that they don't feel safe?
Well, there's clearly the perception. Only 37% of New Yorkers say that they feel their neighborhood is safe, and that's down from 50% when he took office. But then you actually look at the crime statistics, and on every major crime statistic, it is up substantially in the past few years. But his statistics show
that gun crime is down, shootings are down, rape is down.
Rape last year was up 20% in this city. That's a fact. Go look at the numbers. If you parse the numbers carefully enough and look over a short time period, you can make the data say whatever you want. But I'm telling you, over the last 5 years, we had become one of the safest large cities in America, and we've gone backwards dramatically on every major serious crime.
Are you accusing him of fudging the numbers?
Absolutely.
So you have a number of lofty goals, and one of them is to reduce violent crime by 50% in your first 4 years. Yeah. How do you plan to do that?
Yeah, big picture, there are two ways to go about that. Number one, you have to understand that crime is hyper-localized. If you read the newspapers, you'd think there was crime everywhere. In fact, the vast majority of crime occurs in a very small number of neighborhoods. These are the neighborhoods that tend to have failing schools. They don't have good after-school programs. The health system is not taking care of people suffering from mental illness and drug addiction. So there needs to be big investment in the communities across everything the city provides. Secondarily, you have to understand that the crime is hyper-individualized. A very small number of people, fewer than 1% of the people in any community, create all the mayhem. And the cops know who the bad guys are.
So how do you
it's
deal
not
with
a
that?
secret. So we need to both put some more cops in the areas that where criminals are running the show and law-abiding citizens feel endangered. But it's also we need the criminal justice system to then do its job, because I've talked to so many cops who are so frustrated when they know who the bad guy is, they've got him on camera, they arrest him in the act, and he's out that afternoon.
Yeah, but that's the state legislature that changed bail reform laws. So how are you going to deal with that?
It's not.
The mayor can't uniformly by himself change those laws.
You are correct. I'm going to have to be a good politician. I'm going to have to spend some time in Albany and with the governor and the state legislature and with the city council. And it wasn't just bail reform. There were 8 pieces of legislation that passed under Governor Cuomo that I don't think he should have signed, that have collectively made us less safe. And so we're going to have to fix that problem at the state level as well.
But the legislature has been reluctant, to say the least, to make those changes. What can you do different from what Governor Hochul has tried to do and what Mayor Adams has tried to do to change that?
I think 2 things. One, Mayor Adams is particularly ineffective in Albany and the city council because he's under 5 indictments and he has no political power to affect change. Secondly, I think every Democrat in New York State is running scared after what happened on November 5th. The voters are angry. They're voting in the voting booth and telling politicians that we are fed up with the way you're running this city and the way you are failing to protect us. And so I think the time is ripe for some reforms, not repeals of misguided legislation.
So, you know, you talk about what happened on November 5th. One of the things was that people were expressing frustration with the economy. And you, as one of your goals, say that you want to increase prosperity and increase the economy by 30%.
50% in the next 10 years.
And how?
Yeah, well, look, 50% over 10 years is about 4% annual growth, and we can absolutely do that. New York City is one of the greatest places to do business in the world, but we have been turning it into a place that's hostile to businesses. CNBC ranked all 50 states on business friendliness, and New York State came in dead last. And that's crazy.
So how do you change that?
Well, first of all,
I mean, it's a high-tax state. People don't want to come here because the taxes for businesses are so high.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a business person.
That's Albany again.
To some extent, but it's sort of a tone at the top. I'm a business person. I graduated from business school and spent my career. I've built 6 small businesses here in New York City. So I think I can completely change the tone and the environment as a starting point. And that actually matters, the sort of signaling you send. You know, when a big business wants to invest in New York City, like Amazon wanted to put their headquarters here the same way that Google and Facebook did, and instead we drove them away and took tens of billions of dollars of investment, tens of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of great jobs, and sent that down to Washington, D.C. That's crazy. So I will be a super pro-business mayor, and will both with big businesses and the small businesses like the ones I've started.
So we only have a few seconds left, but you also want to reduce the cost of living.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, the biggest piece of the cost of living crisis in this city that's driving so many people out, 8% of our population is left in less than 5 years. The single biggest reason is affordability, particularly housing. Second is people don't feel safe. So how do you address housing affordability? It's basic supply and demand. We have 2/3 of New Yorkers are working class New Yorkers, and we are not building housing for working class people, and that's largely because we've allowed all sorts of zoning restrictions and red tape and so forth to stifle the ability to build new housing.
We'll have to leave it right there for now, but our conversations continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Thank you for joining me. Subway crime is down, but many riders still don't feel safe. Will adding 200 cops change that? New Yorkers are weighing in on your point. Is subway crime getting better or
It
worse?
seems to be getting worse.
Worse.
It's getting worse.
Oh, yesterday I saw everyone backing up against the wall. Everyone's scared to get pushed.
Nobody bothers me.
I have no idea. I've never been attacked. I've lived here all my life.
I haven't experienced the crime directly, but I'm definitely much more aware than I used to be.
Well, I haven't seen it getting any worse. I only read reports of it getting worse.
Every time you turn on the TV, you could hear how somebody got burnt, shot, you know.
The perception is that it's getting worse, but, you know, it's hard to know whether it's just the media picking it up or whether it's actually the statistics.
What do you want to be done about it?
More police presence and tougher enforcement when people are arrested.
I'd like to see more subway staff.
Invest money in fixing it.
I think they need to take care of the homeless problem as much as anything.
We don't need more policemen, is what.
don't?
No, I don't think so. I think we need to give more resources to people who need them, and then there'll be less crime.
We're now paying a toll that's ridiculous and unfair, and it's certainly not going into the subway. There's no improvements to be seen. There's not more trains. It's not cleaner.
I mean, if you're going to charge people congestion to take the train more, which I'm all for public transportation, like, you know, put that money into making sure the trains are safe.
The police commissioner says she's going to put 200 more cops on the subways. Do you think that's going to make a difference?
That's a lot, so it shouldn't make a difference, I think.
I mean, this is a huge subway system, so I don't know how much more 200 cops will do.
I'm not an expert, but it seems like there's a lot of police officers in the subways.
I don't know if that's been helping so far. I don't know what the cops are doing.
Maybe in some way, but they're not going to be everywhere.
I'd like to think that, you know, it's a good deterrent. It certainly would help with response time.
I hope so.
We'll see.
So will more cops make you feel safer?
Yeah.
Probably.
Maybe if they have a presence. I don't know.
Depends on where they're positioned.
Yes, the presence of police, even guardian angels, people like that, support staff, that all helps make people feel better.
Me personally, no. I do know a lot of my female friends who would say yes.
I don't know. I mean, I think so, but I also know that there's plenty of people who don't feel safe around cops.
I do think it makes you feel safer. It always makes you feel safer. Whether or not it's true, I think it makes the majority of people feel safer.